Hey, what's up, Isolation Nation? How are we all going? Crazy times. I wanted to touch on a very big topic, money. Money and finance operates on many different levels, and some people are scared of it. Some people are excited by it. For some people, it represents opportunity. For others, it represents fear or greed. But no matter what side you take or how you view it, I'm sure we can all appreciate that it affects our lives enormously. So I thought I'd bring an expert in money matters. He's delved into the world of investment banking and has a wealth of knowledge and through his experiences. So I'm very proud to introduce Sam Stubbs, Managing Director of Simplicity.
Morning.
Sam, how are you going?
Really good. Yeah. We're all going through our own individual trials on these things, aren't we? So, I've got my shit and my dramas and all that sort of thing like that. but overall it's good.
Yeah, how's the Simplicity crew holding up?
Really well, mate. We're a virtual business anyway, so this is like falling off a log for us. And we're growing still very strongly, which is fantastic as well, because we've got really good returns and low fees and all that sort of stuff. So, there are some businesses that will benefit from recessions. We were doing really well anyway, but we'll do even better in a recession because we're all about saving money.
Yeah, excellent. Just for the viewers out there who may not know your story and background, can you give the quick five of what you are all about and how you came to be here?
Sure. So Simplicity started 3 years ago. It was a consequence of my midlife crisis, something that you'll go through in about 3 decades, Jase, but not there yet, mate. But and I decided to give back after having had a very lucky career. I decided to give back and got together a group of, we're now 15 staff and 57 volunteers, and we decided to run a non-profit finance business. Started out with KiwiSaver, now we're into non-KiwiSaver funds. We just started mortgage lending, and it's really just about giving everything back to the members. We don't make a profit at all, and we give 15% of our fees to charity. We invest ethically, so there are 8 sectors we won't invest in, and we're shareholder advocates as well with the New Zealand companies. We're going to try and get them to operate better, basically, and that's what we do. So we've been 3 years, fastest growing KiwiSaver fund I think ever, and we run we manage about $1.5 billion of other people's money now, and we have about almost 41,000 members now.
Excellent. I really respect what you're trying to do with Simplicity. I think it's pretty amazing for someone to go out there and I guess use investments as a driving force for good and making moral investments. I actually saw your TED Talk live as well. I was in that crowd, so it was pretty cool. For this discussion, I want to start off with the macro and then sort of work our way down to the micro. So I guess in big terms, what does this situation actually mean for the global economy and also the New Zealand economy?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, what it means is we're going to go into a recession, and we haven't had one of those for about 12 years. Now, historically, that's a long period of time before you go into economic slowdown. It's going to happen. It's going to happen because, a lot of businesses have just stopped, and so economic activity has slowed down. So we go into a recession. In a global context, you'll hear a lot of really dramatic headlines about how bad this is. This is my 5th financial meltdown. I've been through a whole lot of stuff in my career, and every single time you hear, all these chicken littles running around saying the sky's going to fall in, and that's exactly what they're doing now. And you get on TV being a doomsayer with the media loves bad news, not good news. So they gravitate towards the person who gives the most dramatic headline, and so you're seeing a lot of that right now. And you've got a lot of people who really whose business has no consequence. There's no consequence for them personally by being a doomsayer now, right? So a lot of bad headlines, but actually historically in context, what we're going through right now is not unusual. We've been through contractions like this frequently, and I won't go. I can go into more detail later on, but basically what you're seeing is absolute numbers being quoted to you, like the biggest drop in the stock market since 1932, or the biggest return since 1938. That's in terms of the number of points change, but the actual percentage change hasn't been that dramatic. So you've seen plenty of corrections of this size. Now, I'm not downplaying the size of the recession, but what I'm saying is it's not as bad as it seems. And also, this time governments learn, people learn, we improve, Jase. We're human beings, we're biologically hardwired to do things a little bit better. And so what governments have learned is that when you get into this, you flood the market with money, you put a whole lot of support in, and that's exactly what's happening. And so that's why I think that we will come out of this faster and stronger than most or many people are predicting right now. But I realise that I'm kind of like a lone voice in the wilderness on that right now, right? Most people like to present a really, really bad scenario. But history tells you that that's unlikely to be the case, So
Yeah.
Winston Churchill said, those who forget the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them.
Yeah. Is New Zealand in a better position than the rest of the world, do you think?
Miles better. For a couple of reasons. First of all is we have very low government debt. There's about 20% going into this, and even if it gets to 40 or 50, that still puts us middle of the pack.
So really?
Yeah. We have the capacity to borrow huge amounts of money. We have been blessed. A lot of people in New Zealand, like New Zealanders are like, English middle class cynics. They slag off their politicians like most modern democracies, right? But we have been blessed with our politicians over the last 3 decades, and particularly our finance ministers. If you look at Michael Cullen, then Bill English, and now Grant Robinson, they've all been extremely sensible managers of money. They've got us into this position where we have this massive rainy day fund. Well, it's raining, Jess. It's raining.
And now we're using it.
Now we're using it, yeah. So we have the capacity to borrow a lot of money. The second thing is we're very sparsely populated, and that's a huge advantage because keeping on top of COVID and keeping it manageable, keeping us all working is going to be easier than when you've got very high population density. And the third thing is that while we're very tourism dependent, we're also very agriculture dependent. And the one thing I can categorically guarantee you, Jase, we're not going to be eating less as a consequence of this. The world is going to want our food just as much as it ever did. And so we've got at least one very strong part of our economy. We're sparsely populated. We have huge amounts of money we could borrow to support. So we're relatively better off. Doesn't mean to say it's not going to get worse. Absolutely, we're going into a recession. Get ready for it. But we're relatively better off. There's no place in the world I'd rather live than here right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we definitely are lucky for all those points you touched on. You know this world better than most. What are the big investment banks around the world doing at the moment, and what's their thinking? What troubles are they facing? What solutions are they trying to create?
Well, the investment banks will just be a metaphor for what's generally happening in the financial markets, right? So they'll just be thinking what the financial markets overall are thinking. And here's what they're thinking. Don't know if you've noticed, but there's been quite a big bounce in the value of the stock markets, right, recently. And that's because, there's this favorite quote of mine: short-term financial markets are a voting machine, long-term they're a weighing machine. What I mean by that is they're a voting machine in the sense that people panic. They get nervous. You saw those huge drops in the market. No one knows what's going on, massive volatility. And that's because financial markets hate uncertainty. And there was uncertainty about just how bad COVID-19 would be, how many people might die, what it would do. And so they absolutely ran away. That's them being a voting machine. That's like us when we go and vote emotionally, right? And most people vote emotionally. They don't vote logically. They don't even know the policies of the parties that are going in, or they're just one or two lines in their head. But long-term financial markets are a weighing machine. And what that means is long-term, they actually take all of the information and they make a rational decision about the likelihood of things recovering. And also, most importantly here, is they weigh up the different returns you'll get from different asset classes. So it's all very well saying, companies are going to lose less money, pay less dividends, sell shares. Okay, so you've sold the shares. What are you going to do with the money now? You stick it in the bank and get paid almost nothing. You're going to stick it in the property market, which might go down or go up. I don't know, So it's a relative game. So the financial markets look at these investments and they say, okay, relatively, where am I going to get the best returns? And that's what they're saying right now. They're saying that actually the world's not that bad a place, investing in businesses will find it tough, but not as tough as you think. And by the way, even if you sold out of these things, sticking it in the bank at almost 0% interest is no great place to have your money.
Yeah. In today's climate, where do you think the pockets of opportunity are for, I guess, people who are trying to find places to put their money?
To do with their money? Well, first thing I'd say is this: is that most private investors are gambling if they're trying to pick a particular company that wins or loses. You have 3 free gifts in investing. One is diversification. You don't have to pay any more for that. You can diversify all of your investments. So I'll give you an example, just one example. Simplicity funds all have 3,000 investments in 23 different countries, right? And you say, oh, goodness, look at all these companies that have gone down. Yes, but we also own A2 Milk, which has gone up, Fisher & Paykel Healthcare, which has gone up, Amazon, which has gone up. There's a whole bunch of these companies. So the diversification smooths out the returns. The second one is dollar cost averaging, and this is a monster. This is when you invest. This is when you invest the same amount of money every week, and that means that Jase, when you bought, are you in KiwiSaver?
I am.
That's right. So when you invest,
I'm in Simplicity actually.
Oh, of course you are. Sorry, I apologise, mate. Thank you very much. Well,
no worries.
Invested this month, you bought the same shares that you bought last month on sale. Dollar cost averaging means you buy stuff at sale prices. Markets going down for someone of your age is great. Markets going down means you get to invest and buy stuff cheaper, which will get more expensive over time. So dollar cost averaging is a massive thing for you, and also compounding interest. You get the interest on the fixed interest investments and dividends. Those are the 3 free gifts. Now, that said, in environments like this, if you're a professional investor, this is happy hunting time right now, because you are going to be able to buy stakes in companies at much cheaper prices and take significant stakes in companies at cheaper prices. So, we're actively looking at that right now. We've committed $100 million to invest in New Zealand's high growth companies.
Oh, wow.
We may also choose to invest more money in also companies that are fantastic family businesses, unlisted, but will just need some help right now, but fundamentally have very strong businesses. They may not have been looking for external investors. They may now want a KiwiSaver investor, for example. So that would be an example of where there are opportunities. And you're going to see a lot of businesses, particularly those businesses that have high fixed assets. So, camper vans or tourist boats or motels, hotels, camping grounds, all those sorts of businesses that have very high fixed costs, typically got quite a bit of debt, and they've got no business coming in the door right now. They'll need help, right? So the opportunity to invest in businesses like that might actually be fantastic.
Because give them help for next year or two, and then see how they ride the wave.
Exactly, and then business comes back, and it will come back. This is not the one thing I can say, Jase. I can confidently predict this is not the end of the world. You would think so.
We definitely have to adapt and make sure that we can get on with life, because as long as you've got a roof over your head and food in your mouth, the world keeps spinning.
And we're investing your KiwiSaver money for the rest of your life,
34
years. So in the next year, if we get the opportunity to buy companies at very, very cheap prices, we will. You've got to see through this.
And the rest of New Zealand. It's quite easy, I guess, for people my age. We will recover. We can make money over their lifetimes. But I suppose it's quite difficult for someone who is maybe at the further along in life and maybe heading into retirement. Maybe they're in retirement and they're just seeing their savings plummet. What advice have you got for them?
Well, I'll tell you, the interesting thing is human beings are very interesting. We think very short term. So you think about me, right? I look old to you. I am old to you, right? I'm 55. Goodness gracious, you can't possibly imagine that, right? But statistically, I have another 29 years to live. If I die at the average age of a male in New Zealand, I've got another 29 years. That's a long time, Jase.
Absolutely. And I know you're a thinker and a doer, so I'm sure there's projects you've got in your head that you want to do.
Heaps to do.
Over the next 29 years.
Yeah. But you see, from an investment perspective, that's like going back and saying that you were investing in 1990. 1991.
True.
Whoa, look at all the stuff that's happened since 1991. That feels like the dark ages now, doesn't it? Well, not to me. I remember it was, you were a twinkle in your parents' eye at that stage, right? So So not 90. So when you think about older people investing, we have this mentality in New Zealand. You get to 65 and then you stick it all in the bank. Well, you got another 20 years to live on
Yeah,
average. So you're going to have to be invested in a wider range of investments than that, and you're going to have to take on more risk. People don't like the word risk, but what risk means is,
especially New Zealanders, I think.
yeah. Well, and you've got to invest in, but saying taking on more risk in your investments also means getting higher returns from your investments. So
We've just got a question from the crowd. Sorry to interrupt you. Joel Gillett. This is way above my head, but hopefully you can help. Which part of the NZ share market do you see potential? We see the likes of A2M, etc., roaring ahead, but perhaps now overvalued based on fundamentals. Cheers, Joel.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. Look, I don't even try and pick which part of the market is going to, because the statistic shows that the chances of you beating the market are about 10% in any one short period of time, and over the longer term, it gets even harder. So, look, look at Auckland Airport, for example. I mean, it's empty right now. That was an asset that was worth $10 miraculously a month ago, and now it's only worth, I don't even know what the share price is now, but $6 something probably. So is it worth 40% less because it's going to have 1 year's left of difficult traffic? Well, I don't know, but but so you can look at those things and say yes or no, but really it's the whole New Zealand share market in general. That's going to be a metaphor for the whole economy, right? And it looks overvalued according to traditional methods, but it's been overvalued like that for 5 years, and you've missed out on about 70% of returns just saying it's overvalued. It's overvalued. Financial markets are incredibly efficient at working out what you should pay for something, and overall they by and large get it right. And so, which is why if you just bought the whole market, which is what we do, we're just passive index investors. We don't pretend to know which company will outperform another. By the way, I spent my life doing that, trying to pick winners, and I had personally a pretty good record at it, but I still don't believe. When we set up Simplicity, we said, what is the way of maximizing member returns? And the thing about me making good investment picks was that was fine, but I was also charging a fortune to the investors to do that. And actually, what they ended up worse off as a consequence. They made a bit more money. The organisations I work for made a lot more money. And the best way to do it is just to buy the whole market, sleep at night, don't worry about whether it's gone up or down, pay the lowest possible fee, and that's how you win.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Warren Buffett, Jase?
I have indeed.
Yeah. Right, world's most successful investor, right? He says you should two things. He said you should be almost criminally negligent with your investments. Don't spend too much time worrying about them. Get the basic settings right, carry on investing, and get on with the rest of your life, because the rest of your life is where you have a competitive advantage, not in trying to beat the financial markets and trying to work out where share prices go. That's the first thing. The second thing he said is, look, for the average investor, just go and buy a passive index product and forget about it. Don't worry about it. Just leave it and let capitalism work for you. Because ultimately, investing in the market, you're making a big bet on capitalism, and that's the worst way of organising a society, except for all the others.
Yeah, I suppose Simplicity has a different slant. I like, you'd know it best, but you try and pick things that are morally and ethically good, I suppose, for the world. Do you think long term that's I guess where the financial gain is going, just because everyone is becoming more woke and everyone wants to
Totally.
do ethical investing? People want to get on that wagon.
I'll give you an example. So the answer is, the reason we did that was twofold. One is, it is what our members want. New Zealanders generally want their money going to good place. But secondly, is we knew it would also lead to superior returns, and it has. So ever since day one, we did this, and we applied to all of our funds. We make no exceptions on this. One of the reasons why we're performing as well as we are is that consumers like yourselves are buying according to their values increasingly as well. And supply capital like ourselves are investing according to values. I'll give you an example of that. So we exclude eight sectors, and on average, we outperform about between 0.5% to 1.5% a year, depending on the fund you're in. And just recently, all through this COVID thing in the last month, our share portfolios have outperformed by 2.5%. Now, why is that? People say it's just oil because the oil stocks, because the price of oil has collapsed and we don't invest in fossil fuel extraction. Yes, but that's also, yes, the reality is right now no one's driving their cars, but we also know long term people don't want to be in fossil fuel heavy industries. They don't want to be driving cars that burn petrol if they can be driving cars that you can plug in or that are hydrogen powered or whatever. These are long-term consumer trends, right? They don't actually like, we have these pictures of people lining up outside gun shops in the States and we think weapons are a great investment. They're not. Weapons companies have been underperforming for a very long period of time. And the reason the reason is the world's actually, even though we spend a lot of time talking about what America spends on its armed forces, actually the world is spending less on weapons. And that's because people like yourselves, forget about my generation, we're Cold War children, right? Your generation, you think the real enemy is viruses and cyber terrorism, not people with guns. And you know what? You're right. And so you as taxpayers...
And also global warming.
Global warming.
To add to the mix.
Exactly. So you vote and you attach yourself to companies that want to do that. So clean energy companies have been outperforming old energy companies, oil-based energy companies for a very long period of time. So it makes perfect financial sense because ultimately it is how consumers and investors feel. And this is the thing about financial markets, Jase, is they always reflect humanity. I know that sounds crazy. You don't think of the word financial stock market and humanity in the same phrase, but ultimately what people do collectively is reflected in the price of companies and what companies do well and don't do well.
Yeah, wow. Hadn't thought of that before. We have a follow-up question from Joel again. He said, Sam, do you have an opinion on where the residential property market might head?
Yeah, look, I have an opinion. It's only my personal opinion because we don't invest in residential property, although we are now, New Zealand's lowest cost mortgage lender. So we lend on first home buyers who are members of Simplicity. But my view on residential property is this: look, first of all, is people need a place to live, right? So it's not like there's this massive surplus of housing that people will sell and you can't get any income from, and whereas in 2008, when you saw the global financial crisis, there was a massive surplus of housing, particularly in the United States. People just overbought and done crazy lending. That's not the case here. So people need to live. Second thing is that you can say that housing will go down in value, and it may well go down in value, but history tells you that it doesn't go down very much. And the reason is that if you look at the returns that you will get on housing, they're still superior to the returns you'll get on putting your money in the bank. So as long as interest rates remain very low, people can borrow at very low rates on their mortgages, and as long as residential income is higher than bank, in theory, that shouldn't go down too much. So we don't have a massive oversupply. The returns are still okay. New Zealanders don't have much else to put their money into. Why would it go down a lot? Other than fear. Oh, no one's going to, and it's the first bill you pay, right, Jase? So you got to pay your rent or your mortgage. Then you think about eating.
Yeah. So.
You do, right? And so I typically what happens with housing markets right now is what they call liquidity will dry up. There just won't be many purchases or sales. There'll be one or two that will come out that will really spook the market. So expect to see some headlines about terrible residential prices drop X. Actually, a couple of houses sold. And then everyone extrapolates that and thinks, oh, the world's going to end.
And say it's the whole market.
Everyone then freezes up, right? Everyone doesn't. The people who are going to sell don't sell because I'm not selling. They go back to their bank and they say, I need to renegotiate my mortgage, and the bank will renegotiate your mortgage, because if it forces you to sell, that means it creates another bad piece of news, which devalues property generally, which puts the bank's mortgage lending under stress for all of their borrowers. You see what I mean? So the bank basically is encouraged to not have you sell your house in a distressed fashion. So everyone wants the residential property market to hold up. It is in nobody's interest for it to go down, especially the bank.
You touched on quite a important point in terms of what the media says and how that influences markets. Yeah. Is it just the natural turn of events, or is there a way we can keep the media and people on socials accountable so that, I guess, these mad fluctuations don't happen, or is it just going to happen?
I don't think so. That's the way the media is, right? We love bad news more than good news.
Yeah. You know? And especially with the wild west of social media, and anyone can have their say, and it's whoever shouts loudest has an impact.
Yeah, exactly. Shouts loudest, and everyone trades on fear, and it's much more talking point. You know, let me give you an example. I'm reading this book, possibly the best book I've ever read. It's by a guy called Steven Pinker. It's called Enlightenment Now, and it's all about every good reason why you should feel positive about the world using data.
Oh, wow.
And you would have seen, you're a TED Talk, you would have seen Hans Rosling on TED Talk.
Yes.
Yeah. So once again, using data to paint a picture about what's really happening in the world, forget about the headlines, right? There's another guy called Matt Ridley who did this book, The Rational Optimist. That's another one to read as well. Absolutely fantastic books. So what they do is they say, we're going to take a humanist, rationalist approach to the world. We're not interested in emotions and headlines, we're interested in data. So show us actually what's happening, right? Now, if I told you that the world has got, that poverty, that hunger is a bigger or lesser problem, most people say, oh, it's terrible, it's worse, and you say how much worse it is. Actually, if you're an optimist, the headline in the paper would read every single day, another 185,000 people have been taken out of poverty today. Because actually that's what's happening in the world.
Yeah, I think from my understanding, capitalism has raised everyone up. Although the disparity has increased between the top and the bottom, everyone's been pulled up. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. And everything's getting better. Longevity is getting better. Wealth is getting better. The arts and the culture are flourishing. There's a whole lot of really, really good statistics. But do you think that makes it to the paper? That doesn't make a headline.
No, doesn't sell papers.
You don't want to hear it. Doesn't sell papers. People love, even though people are trying all of their lives to make their lives better, and we become better collectively as a consequence, for some reason, we're addicted to, it's almost like a dopamine hit that you get from bad news.
Yeah, it's that fight or flight response. You know, it's part of our primal instinct.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Or it's the Germans have this phrase Schadenfreude, which is delighting in the pain of others, or taking pleasure from others' misfortune, basically, which is a very, and that's what a lot of gossip is about, right?
Yeah, jumping sideways slightly, do you think the financial literacy of New Zealanders is at a good place, or we need to improve? And if so, how can we improve?
It's super low. It's super low everywhere in the world. And that's why we set up Simplicity. That's what we call it, Simplicity. That's why we talk in very simple language when you have websites and stuff. And that's because money needs demystifying. The finance industry is kind of like the priesthood of maybe the 1900s, or maybe the 1600s. Only they could read the Bible. Back in the old days, only the priests could read the Bible, so everyone believed what they said. And they had a lot of social control because of that. Finance industry loves to confuse you because actually, Jase, money's really simple. Money is really, really simple.
How would you break it down in real simple terms?
There's only 5 or 6 things you need to know about money, and you're totally on top of it. And you've
Perfect.
won.
Let's hit them.
Right. Yeah, well, we'll hit those in a minute. I'll tell you about them in a minute. Well, just some of them. Then this, it's a different list for different groups of people. But basically, the finance industry wants you to believe it's complex, it's difficult, it's hard, which is why you see all these, these billboards with happy families and swimming pools. Bank billboards are all about happy families and swimming pools. The subliminal message to you is money is confusing. Don't bother thinking about it. Just give it to us and we'll look after it. And in the process, the big 4 banks make $1,000 in profit on average from every New Zealander every year.
Oh, wow.
Right? Yeah, they make $21 million a day in profit from New Zealanders. Now, that's because if they were to inform you about money and you found out how simple it was, you wouldn't be paying them nearly as much. That would be a very bad thing for them. So even though they say they want financial literacy, actually they don't. They want you to be. So our industry generally, I'm not just blaming banks, the industry generally. So our industry doesn't want you to be informed, which is why they haven't. Which is why you don't have, a whole lot of books or things saying the 5 simple rules about money. You don't get that from the suppliers of financial products. You just get it from independent people. So here are just some of the rules, right? Avoid debt at all costs, right? Debt kills you because that compounding interest?
Yep.
It works against you. The debt compounds up as well, right? So pay off debt. The first thing you should do, and this is not personal financial advice, it's just general rules. First thing you do when you got $1, pay off debt. And that means cut up your credit cards. If you've got a mortgage, pay it off as fast as you possibly can, and that's how you win. So that's the first rule. Debt is bad. By the way, for the finance industry, debt is great.
That's where they make their money.
Totally. Banks make $1 billion in after-tax profit in New Zealand a year from credit card debt.
Right? Wow.
Yeah, which is now. So the banks don't tell you don't get credit cards. They say, buy our credit card, it's got a lower interest rate. The interest rate's still massive. Huge.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so why are they like 17%?
Yeah. Oh, God, absolutely. 18%.
Astronomical.
Some of the low-cost cards are 12%. I mean, it's just insane. Right? And they say consolidate all your debt, will make it easy. That's because they want to charge you the interest on all of your debt rather than you pay some of their competitors. So there's a whole lot of BS about debt. Just pay the damn stuff off. To get into it very reluctantly and get out of it enthusiastically, right? Second thing is, get yourself a simple, and this is not a plug for KiwiSaver, any KiwiSaver account, just get yourself a KiwiSaver fund because you'll get free money. If you put in as an adult $1,042 a year, the government will give you another $521.
Yeah.
That is free.
Such a sweet
money.
deal.
That is free. It is literally free money. There is no other free money in the whole world, but in the whole of New Zealand. So that's free money. That's the sense. So just get a KiwiSaver, and KiwiSaver is a safe place. It's diversified investment. So that's the second thing, right? The third thing is consolidate your bank accounts. Like do a deal with your bank. You should not be paying as few fees as possible. They want your business, and they will not offer you these things unless you ask for it. So don't be afraid to ask questions and just ask simple questions, but you shouldn't be paying fees on basic accounts. Fourth thing is if you want to buy a house, the only thing that matters when you're buying a house in terms of a mortgage is the rate you pay on the mortgage. So forget about all these sweethearts about cashbacks and all these rinky-dink stuff are designed to rope you in to pay a higher interest rate. And it doesn't matter who you borrow money from because once they've lent you the money, it's their problem. Yeah. You're repaying it is their problem.
Yeah.
Right? So don't feel as if you've got to borrow from somebody credible and established. Borrow from the person who lend it to you at the cheapest possible rate.
That's awesome advice. For those last 2 points, you said that you should have those conversations with your bank. How do you go about that? Because obviously these people, they know money inside out. You're just your average Joe blogs off the street. You may not understand the system and how that all works. What do you need to do?
It's really simple. You don't have to be confrontational. You don't have to know anything. The bank teller actually wants to help you. The bank teller used to have targets to sell and whatever. Now they're told to look after their customers. Just ask them, how can I do it cheaper? How can I pay less? Just ask that question. Let them tell you. They know all the product is. And ask it again, or how can I pay even less? Just ask that 2 or 3 times. I can't guarantee anything, but the very high chance that you'll end up paying, that you will literally be told about something that you weren't. If you don't ask the question, you don't get the answer. So just ask the question. You don't have to go in there knowing anything. Just say, what's the, or anyway, the one I asked is, what's the cheapest way I can do this?
Yeah, and you don't need to go to just one person either. You can try go to different banks, go to maybe a private investor. You can have many different conversations.
Well, you can, but even with the basic banks and insurance companies, I mean, I had one renewing my car insurance the other day. I just said, well, how can I do this cheaper? What's the cheapest way I can do this? And miraculously, they came up with the cheapest way of doing it.
Wow. Yeah, simple as that.
They're full of really good people. They mean well. They want to look after you. The institutions they work for are very greedy, but the
Yeah.
individuals are very nice people, and by and large, they'll want to help you.
Yeah, great advice. We're obviously heading into tough times. There's a lot of people who have been made redundant. Maybe they have dependents. I'm lucky that I'm not in any of those situations, but obviously there will be a large sector who are in those situations. Maybe they don't have their money in check and haven't built up a huge amount of savings. What's your number one advice for those types of people?
Well, look, I think that first of all is don't get overly despondent. Things will get better, right? It's going to feel real tough and real hard doing it, and don't pay too much attention to what you hear in the media about things getting worse, right? Because things are always getting worse until they're getting better, and the media never get that, right? So, so the first thing is and don't take it personally. Like, there'll be a lot. There might be a lot of people out of jobs, so it's not about you, just about what happened with the economy. But the third thing is that just keep on trying. Don't give up, right? Because even though jobs are scarce, there will still be jobs around. So it's just about getting out there, and generally, effort gets rewarded here.
Yeah.
She or he who tries hardest wins.
Hard work works.
Yeah, and just keep on asking, and boy, it's tough. It's demoralizing. I've been in this situation. It's really hard, but it does get better, and you can find something. So just and assume nothing.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone convince you that things can't happen. Just because all people can do is say no, right? Just
Yeah.
words. It's just words, and it's not personal to you.
Yeah.
And then if you get enough no's, you'll eventually get the yes.
Yeah. You mentioned you had some tough times. I suppose you have been in the finance sector and when the GFC hit 12 years ago. What was the feeling around that at that
Oh,
time? Was everyone
totally
panicking?
terrible. Yeah, of course, totally another
Was it
terror.
nuts? Yeah.
Half my friends lost their jobs.
Yeah.
Um, it's a lot of loss of money. But also, I grew up, Jase, when I was your age, I grew up in a recessionary New Zealand. I mean, we used to have unemployment of 12, 13, 14%. We had 70% debt to GDP. Interest rates on mortgages were like 18%,
Mm.
and it was
Wow.
really hard. It was
Yeah.
really hard. And I went through university and got my first jobs in that environment. So, but there's always opportunity. There's always something happening. There's always something you can do. And so I just took jobs that, I wouldn't have otherwise done, but at least I was working.
Yeah. Kept a roof over your head.
Yeah, totally. And things get better. Quite often you don't notice it. They almost get better without you even recognizing it. And suddenly you turn around and say, "Oh, okay, things are really better." And that's happened with New Zealand. We were practically bankrupt in about 1981, 82,
Oh,
when Robert
wow.
Muldoon, he left us basically a bankrupt nation,
Yeah.
and we crawled our way out of it.
Will this type of thing affect generations, or is it more like a 10-year thing, or how long does it take to come out of that spot?
Always less than you think.
Yeah.
You always come out faster than you think. So right now you're getting all the doomsayers saying it's a depression, it's going to take a generation and everything. Come on, guys. The world shut down for a couple of months. It's not actually the end of the world. Nothing has been destroyed. The buildings are still there. The ships are still there. The trains are still there. The coffee machines will work when you turn them on in the mornings. The computers will still work. We've all found a different way of communicating like this right now. It's going to be bad for a while for sure, but it's not that bad. This is not a once in a lifetime destruction. Now, unless the one thing I say, this is a medical problem, so I have no idea whether we'll get on top of COVID-19 or whether we'll come back again or whatever. That could really stuff us up for a while, right? As it did with the Spanish flu in 1918 and that. But even then, look, I look at AIDS. When I was your age, AIDS was a massive deal, right? It was going to kill millions. There was never going to be any cure because it's a virus. Now, we haven't cured AIDS, but it's now a chronic disease. It's now manageable. And so the fear of AIDS was just incredible. when I was your age. So human beings have this amazing ability to adapt.
Yeah.
An amazing ability to adapt.
Especially since we have tech now, we have the world at our fingertips from, I suppose, our home offices. We have this ability to keep working, get the wheels turning, even when we're in lockdown. We can adapt like people had to.
And we're already doing human trials on COVID-19 vaccines less than 6 months after the identification of them. That was a process that would have normally taken, we would normally six to 8 years to get to this point. That we've done in 6 months.
Amazing.
So and look, there's some real silver linings here. Think about all the money that's now going to go into medical research to make sure that we get the next vaccine really quickly.
So true.
We're going to get some. And think about, here's the other thing. Think about how we've all learned to work online now.
Yeah, incredible. I had a mate who coined it boomers to zoomers. It's a like
well, that's me, mate.
Yeah. It's it was an interesting term, but it's just cool to see everyone moving into the tech world and seeing how they operate there. It's
and that's an environmentally friendlier world too, right?
Absolutely.
Because had to get a car to get into the office.
What do you think New Zealand will look like in a year's time, and then also in 5 years' time? Big picture stuff. Just what does the future hold? Do you think?
1 year's time is a little bit harder to predict because you don't know how deep and long this recession will be. But as a general rule, I think you'll find it's better than people expect. I think there's a bunch of people now that are naively wandering around thinking the government can solve everything. I mean, this government's got a huge reputation right now, right? But I think economically, the economic reality is something that may have escaped a few people. Secretly, too, Jase, I think some people are quite liking the lockdown. It's a whole, But so in the 1 year, it's hard to know because it depends an awful lot on how much the government spends in order to generate economic activity. And remember, we've got an election coming up in 6 months' time, so that's really hard to know too, right? Whether a change of government. So I'm uncertain predicting that, and I don't really think in that short term of time frame. 5 years, very optimistic, and the reason is that if history tells us anything, we'll get on top of this medically. Secondly, New Zealand is going to come out of this smelling of roses internationally. I think Jacinda Ardern is probably the most respected politician in the world right now. If you had an election for Secretary General of the United Nations, she'd be quids in, right?
Yeah.
So New Zealand will look really, really good. Secondly, is we have this massive pool of saving and assisting us. So when you look at the money that iwi's got, the New Zealand Super Fund, but mostly KiwiSaver. KiwiSaver funds have got $50 billion now. They're going to have, $55 billion. They're going to have $200 billion by 2030. And it's a rising tide of money. It comes in every single day, and we'll invest that money in New Zealand, and we'll go from being a capital poor country to a capital rich country. And having much more money around makes us a lot more like Denmark or Switzerland or even Australia, which is a lot richer than we are, purely because they've been saving money for a very long time. So we're about to go into this, what I call this renaissance of growth. It's a great time to be young, by the way, Jase. It's an awesome time to be going into a new career because there's a whole lot of stuff that will happen when you have more money, you have more options. There's just more options in society as well.
How much did you say that pool of money was for KiwiSaver?
Well, it will grow to 200 billion, but I'll give you the really big picture. So 10 years ago, if you added up all the money that New Zealanders had saved outside of bank deposits, it would have been about $50 billion. That's 10 years ago. If you go forward another 10 years, that pool will be about $500 billion. So it will grow 10 times in 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, a lot of that money will stay in New Zealand. Some of it will get invested offshore, but a lot of it will stay in New Zealand.
What percentage is invested in New Zealand companies?
About 60% is overseas right now, about 40% in New Zealand. But as New Zealand gets bigger, it'll become more and more attractive. The bigger the economy, the more money you have saved domestically. So that will not only fuel a lot of high-tech companies, growth companies, as we're doing in terms of investing via Icehouse, it's also going to build a lot of infrastructure in New Zealand, and which will be great for economic activity and our lifestyles generally. So this is a really, like, on a 5-year time frame, I'm very, very optimistic. It's probably the best time to live in New Zealand ever.
When you say infrastructure, is that roads? Is that better tech? Is that just the whole package?
Yeah, the whole package, man. Yeah, road, even down to stormwater and sewage, the sort of stuff that you don't think about, but we need electricity grids, roads, all that stuff. But it's also going to be, huge tech infrastructure spends as well, and there's just going to be a lot more money to fund startups too and high growth businesses. So, it's just a different country that you live in when there's more money around, and that's about to happen. So 5 years couldn't be more optimistic. Probably the next decade will probably be the best time ever to live in New Zealand.
Wow, cool to hear.
In history, yeah. In the next 1 year, don't know.
Yeah, we have a question from Sally. She says, isn't it important where the government spends rather than how much it spends?
Yeah.
Can you please give more detail on this?
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a very good point, Sally. So the government, I think about it in two ways. The government can spend on consumption or it can spend on investment. Right now, it's spending on consumption. It's just giving people money, right, to live. And that's going to be really important. But longer term, it needs to spend on investment. There's a general rule. If a government spends $1 on something, as long as it's getting more than that dollar's worth of value back, it's a good investment, right? And as long as it increases gross domestic product at a faster rate than the interest it has to pay. So let's say it builds a road, it'll borrow at about 1.5% interest right now for 15 years, incredibly low rates. As long as that road generates 1.5% higher economic activity, to the value of the investment, it's a good investment. So pretty much all infrastructure is a really good spend right now. You would easily get that in terms of GDP growth from roads, sewers, grids, and so on. So consumption versus investment is a really, really big one. The other one is it also depends on where it spends the money in terms of its discretionary spend. So let me give you an example. There's going to be a really big question now about why we would spend $600 million a year on defence, buying new warships, planes, and whatever, when we could be spending it arguably on the real enemy, which is cyber terrorism or viruses. So maybe we should spend that on hospitals. Maybe we should spend our national security is about ensuring that our IT infrastructure is safe or our electricity transmission grids are safe. So I think there's going to be a realignment of government priorities there, because previously we thought we had the money for everything. Now we don't. We've used up that day fund. We've eaten all the nuts that we were saving. Now we're going to get tougher with our spend. And I see particularly the defence budget as being a problem.
And in terms of how much the government is spending on this issue, is it a lot compared to the whole pool of money that they have?
Yeah, it's a fortune. So I'll just give you. I'll give you some very simple numbers. Let's say the gross domestic product in New Zealand is about $300 billion a year. The government at the moment is spending on wage subsidies about $500 million a day.
Oh, wow.
A day, yeah. And the cost to a GDP, most economists would say, is about $1 billion a day.
When you say the cost of a GDP?
So our hit GDP is about $1 billion a day at the moment.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're losing. So it's about 0.33% GDP, annualized GDP hit every day that we stay in level 4 lockdown. So this is really expensive. So previously our government owned 20% of our GDP was in debt, very low internationally. Japan, by example, is 230%. They got 10 times more debt per person than we have here. So we're very lowly indebted. We're going to go to somewhere between 40 to 50%. That will put us in the middle of the pack in terms of modern liberal democracies or capitalist democracies around the world. So heaps of room to borrow, which is why the government's doing it with confidence right now and can afford this medical solution that they've taken on. But more debts. That thing I said before, Jase, about always pay off your debt if you possibly can.
Yeah.
Even at 1.5% interest, it's still expensive for the government.
For sure. what's the impact on an economy like Japan when you have 230% debt? Because I haven't really played in this world before. Just you brought up an interesting topic.
Yeah, it's a massive. So the impact is not great in the short term if interest rates are really low. So interest rates in Japan are virtually zero. And it's not great when you borrow from your own population. So most of that debt is savings by Japanese in their own banks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They're also a nation of massive savers, but the government is very indebted. The individual households don't have much debt at all. So whereas in New Zealand, our individual households have a lot of debt, but the government doesn't have a lot. So it's different around the other way around. But long-term debt's never good, and too much debt is never good, right? So that's just meant that a slowing of the Japanese economy over a long period of time. Although arguably also, and these things are always complicated, Jase, Japan's got a shrinking population too. They will not allow immigrants in to rejuvenate their population. They do not want high immigration, whereas a country like New Zealand has had relatively high immigration.
Why wouldn't they want immigration and bring in skilled workers, do you think?
You'd have to ask the Japanese, but they seem to be much more of a monocultural country. They've traditionally been a country that has not welcomed immigrants or not welcomed multiculturalism in quite the same way as a country like New Zealand may have. And there's a long history of that. That's been part of the way the Japanese have wanted to be as a country and still apparently want to be. They'd rather get old and age and see their population shrink than welcome in immigrants.
Just for general principles, like as you go up the levels of money, like you have the individual level, but then you have the macro global economic level. Are the principles still the same? Are the rules still the same? They just like play with more zeros in their account?
It's a great question, and the answer is yes. It's exactly the same.
Oh,
you don't manage your country's finances any different than you manage your household finances.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit more complex, or a little bit more things to think about, but the principles are exactly the same.
Yeah. There's no different rules for the people at the top. Supply and demand.
Money
compound
is
interest.
Jase, and it's the same simple rules everywhere.
Yeah.
It's one of the simplest things. The finance industry presents an image to the world of being complex, difficult. It's not.
Yeah. It's an interesting world. Definitely an interesting topic. Just in summary, do you have any closing comments for anyone who's viewing this?
Well, look, it's not as bad as it seems. So you're going to get a lot of bad, but go forward positively and optimistically, and just keep money simple, and things will be okay.
Yeah.
We are incredibly well led. I'm not taking a view on Labour versus National. Politicians generally are very high quality in New Zealand. We like to slag them off, but I wouldn't swap for any other politicians anywhere in the world. Well, maybe a few Scandinavian countries would give us a run for the money. But we're incredibly well led. We have plenty of money to get out of this, and we have a real can-do attitude. We have.
Excellent.
Look how New Zealanders have behaved so far, impeccably, really.
Yeah. Thanks so much. If people want to get in touch with you,
Sure.
What's the best avenues?
Yeah. Just give me a call. Anyway, I'll give everyone my phone number. So it's 021 491 547.
Oh, wow. Incredible.
Or sam.stubbs@simplicity.kiwi.
Magic.
The small country, Jase. I'm not that. No one's that important, mate. You can.
Yeah. Well.
Number.
Thank you so much for jumping on with the youngster such as myself, and I'm really impressed by what you do in the financial sector. It's cool to see you're making moves and making ethical decisions, because I put that on a pedestal and I really respect it.
And thank you very much for being a Simplicity member, mate. That's lovely.
Oh, no worries. All right, Sam. Thanks so much. We'll catch you soon.
Bye-bye.